Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a powerful story that really gets you thinking about one of life's biggest questions. How much of our success is actually from our own hard work, and how much is guided by a hand we just can't see? So let's start with that big question, a question that a young, ambitious man named Nasir was grappling with himself. See, he was absolutely convinced that his future was something he, and he alone, was going to build, piece by piece. But, well, a totally unexpected challenge was about to shake the very foundation of everything he believed. All right, so our story kicks off in this quiet little town where a wise, respected healer named Saleh lived with his son, Nasir. Now, they worked side by side, but when it came to how they saw the world, let's just say they were on completely different pages. And this right here, this was the core of their disagreement. You see, Saleh, the father, he believed their work was a form of service. The real provision, the real success came from a higher power. But Nasir, he looked at the long hours, the tough journeys, and he saw the result of their own sweat and struggle. For him, the math was simple. More effort equals more reward. Period. So time goes on, right? Saleh is getting older, not as strong as he used to be, and the shop supply of really important medicines starts running low. The job of restocking fell to Nasir. It was a long, dangerous trip to a faraway city, and this time, he was going to have to do it all by himself. So as Nasser is getting ready to head out, his dad doesn't hand him a map or a bunch of cash. Instead, he gives him this piece of advice. To Nasser, though, they were just nice words, a comforting thing a father says. He had absolutely no idea how literally those words were about to be put to the test. And Nasir, he's young, he's confident. He sets off thinking, I've got this. He's sure his own planning, his own strength, and his sheer determination are all he's gonna need. In his mind, faith was something for later. His success was going to be proof of what he could do on his own. But, of course, the journey wasn't that simple. It quickly turned into something way more dangerous than he ever expected. Something that would push his self-reliance to its absolute breaking point, stripping away all that confidence until pretty much nothing was left. For the first few days, everything's going according to plan. But then he hits this huge, unforgiving desert. And that's when it all starts to fall apart. By evening, it's a disaster. His food is gone, his water is gone, and worst of all, he is completely and utterly lost. That confidence he left home with, it had totally vanished into the dry desert air. Okay, so picture this. He's totally alone, he's exhausted, and he's pretty sure he's not going to make it. He's at his absolute lowest point. And right then, in that total despair, with nowhere else to turn, his father's words come flooding back to him. When all paths close, call upon Allah. So he does one last desperate check of his supplies. And what does he find? Just one tiny water skin, with only a few precious drops of water left inside. And that little bit of water forces him to make this impossible choice. So what do you do? I mean, this is a huge decision, right? On one hand, logic is just screaming at him, drink the water, stay alive a little bit longer. But then there's this other idea, his father's idea of faith, which suggested a completely different path. Use that last bit of water to prepare for prayer. And you know what he did? He chose faith. And this incredible act of just letting go. He turned his back on what seemed logical. He poured the last of his water to perform his ablutions, and then he fell to the ground in prayer, placing his fate entirely in a power way beyond himself. And almost immediately, the moment he finishes his prayer, in the dead silence of the desert, something unbelievable happens. Something that just defied all explanation. Out of nowhere, a wild dog appears. Now you can imagine, Nasir is terrified. He thinks, this is it. This is how it ends. But the dog, it just walks up, drops a little bag at his feet, and sits down. And inside, Nasir finds warm food and a full water skin. He just ate and drank, his mind completely reeling. And get this, the next morning, the dog is still there. When Nasir starts walking, the dog actually stops him, barks, and guides him onto a different path, leading him away from a dangerous area and towards a small house he can just barely see on the horizon. It was like a guide sent from nowhere. So he gets to this little house, and an old woman greets him. And as they start talking, the final
absolutely mind-blowing pieces of this puzzle start to click into place, revealing a plan so much bigger than he could have ever imagined.
The woman starts telling him this really strange story. She says, "Last night I prepared a bag of food and water as charity for any traveler who might need it, but a wild dog just snatched it and ran off into the desert." And you can just imagine Nasir's face when he hears that. He was that traveler. And that's when the whole picture, this unbelievable chain of events, becomes crystal clear. It turns out, on the very same night he was lost, miles and miles away, his own mother had a bad dream about him and gave charity as a prayer to keep him safe. Two different acts of kindness in two different places were somehow connected by a dog to find one young man at his absolute moment of need. So when he gets home, his father, Saleh, just lays it all out for him. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a lesson, a message, delivered through three clear signs. First, that his provision was destined for him, and it found him no matter what. Second, that a sincere act of charity is never, ever wasted. And third, that prayer really can open closed doors, and help can show up from the most unexpected places you can think of. So what's the big takeaway here? Nasir started out his journey believing everything depended on his own hard work. But he ended up seeing that his life was connected to the faith, prayers, and actions of others in ways he couldn't even fathom. And that leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. Where in our own lives might an unseen plan be at work? What invisible threads might be weaving through our struggles, connecting us to a much larger design?